Hello and welcome. I thought I would do a bit of a voiceover for this one. That's what all the sailing YouTubers are doing these days, so I thought I'd give it a go. Makes explaining things a bit easier than having to type it out. So you might notice at the start of this club race today, we're in a bit of a strange position, and there's a simple explanation of that, which is we didn't read our sailing instructions. Since the last time we'd done a club race, the starting sequence has changed, and I knew it changed, but hadn't really expected such a big change. So when the first warning signal went, we were expecting to have 6 minutes before the start, when in reality we had 4. So those 2 minutes we were expecting to start lining up for the line, we were just in the complete wrong place. But we do end up being sort of in amongst the fleet here, just rolling over this Vario at the moment and getting to start sailing our VMG mode. Those K6s ahead are our real main benchmark. They should be a little faster than us in the handicap race, so if we can stay in touch with them, sort of on the same leg within the same kind of shifts, then we tend to think we're doing an alright job here. That 2000 is a bit of a target with the blue hull. We should be getting past them, even with our poor start. On the handicap we should be able to catch up to them. So those are our goals for this race. Just heading up to the first mark here, and we'll see how we go. So you see we're not pointing quite as high as the K6 ahead of us here on the first beat, but we eventually get the lift that they're in as it comes down to us. We're opting for the one tacking in to the mark here. Most of the fleet has gone off on port. We ended up having a pretty good position off the start, really, because we started on port and the course was quite biased, at least in this first upwind leg, from the start line. So in a way we ended up being a little bit lucky on our starting position because we didn't know the sailing instructions. That comes into play later, but for now we're just trying to get up to the ley line of this mark. So here we are, approaching the first mark ley line. I think Henry and Susie in the 2000 have tacked a tad too early, so we tack just above them, and it ends up working in our favour. You see they end up shooting up just to get around the mark, so we gain a bit of time. There they are, just getting around the mark. As we approach this mark here, we are going to fetch it and we end up being ahead of a few boats that we really ought to be behind, even after such a poor start. There's a 700 behind us and a K6 at least, from memory. So we've done alright on that first leg to stay in touch with the fleet. The 2000 there jibing away, but we think we see something out to this right hand side, and that's where we were coming from on the way up, so we reckon we'll stay on this course, and in a moment you'll see the 700 gets the gust a little bit before us because there's a line of breeze coming down the course on this right hand side. And here we go, it's just filling in, and this will take us down nicely to the first bottom mark. Looking for our lane line now and decided to go for the jibe because we think we're on it. Not a bad jibe. Nice and easy in the light winds, to be fair. But we're making it work, and we appear to be right on the lane line with a decent angle in, so we'll have a pretty good VMG on the way down. We're getting closer to the bottom mark here, and you see we've overtaken the 2000 by quite some margin, so the right hand side has paid off for us. But we're beginning to think about this mark grounding, and the K6 inside us is going to have rights to go inside us. Not a problem. But this is going to be our first kite drop of the day. easy, drop it a bit earlier than we usually do, and Dad's done that nice and smoothly, nice and quickly. So a good kite drop, and just leaving mark room for this K6 to come up inside us as we round up. But they've had a little bit of kite trouble there, so we're going to be able to squeeze out past them as they sort that out, unfortunate for them, and that will just give us room to tack away when we want to, if we get enough space as we squeeze past them. Settled into a nice groove now upwind after tacking away, but it's nice and flat. The main is pretty far in, so the rig is set up pretty well for the wind strength we've got now, which is exactly where I want to be. I'm going for a tack here because we think we're going to get a lift, and there it is as the gust comes. Immediately get a nice little lift onto port, which will take us, if it stays, take us all the way up to the mark. As the wind strength increases throughout the day, it starts to get shiftier and shiftier with the gusts affecting our apparent wind, but for now it's fairly consistent and we're just hanging on. Main eased a little bit to get us all the way upwind. So the catamaran going past us there has had a pretty big gust, and we're coming into it now, which again is lifting and lifting us all the way to the mark, which is great for us. We're still just ahead of that K6 that was with us at the bottom mark. Basically we just drop out the edge of this gust here and it drops us into windward, which we weren't quite expecting. See there, we just get dumped on the way out of the gust as it drops off, and the K6 there below us hasn't quite had the same header, and we're now looking almost even to them, which we were hoping won't happen, but we see some more wind coming. We see another gust that is going to lift us, so we stay on that course rather than tacking on the shift. It's one of those days where you can't quite tell if it's a shift in the wind direction or if it's just the wind speed dropping off and your apparent wind swinging all the way around to the front, which heads you. So we stay the course, and again we'll go for one tack and into the ley line. getting nice and shifty up in this corner where the trees are. So I'm becoming twitchier and twitchier on the helm as the day goes on, because these small shifts with the gusts are just really unpleasant sometimes. So we've tacked on the first mark ley line here, again fetching it pretty neatly, but I'm taking some extra height because as these gusts drop off we do have to head slightly to keep the boat flat. We've got starboard rights over this K6 and we do round just ahead as they attack behind us, and we go straight into the kite hoist again. Again, we're opting for the right hand side because you might be able to see the gust just on the right hand edge of the screen there, hoping it will fill in and take us downwind nicely again, same as last lap. So you see that gust has come and gone and we're in a bit of no man's land now. So just looking around, seeing if there's anything worth driving for, and keeping an eye on the other boats in the fleet. This mark here on the left hand side of the screen is on the laser course and the general handicap fleet. So we don't want to get too close as there's lots of boats there, and we don't want to mess with their race either. So we jibe away here. Again, not a bad jibe. A bit of rocking. We're still working on anticipating each other's moves. Really that's what it is. Trying to steer to anticipate where Dad's going. This alto is with us, so hopefully we're going to get the same wind as they do. We think we're just fetching the mark here if we can go deep, but we will be slow. So we'll see if anyone manages to get around us on the way down. So the breeze is filling in again here, and we're taking some depth, as much depth as we can out of it, to make sure we can lay this mark without having to do more jibes. The main's quite far out, and we're just trying to go nice and deep. Approaching this mark now, and we can see the alto, they're jibed a little bit after us, so they're on a nicer angle down to this mark, and they're going to be able to carry a bunch more speed than us. There's also the 700 Tom down there, who looks like he's had a bit of kite trouble, so we think we're going to round ahead, but this alto might just sneak in. We've got inside rights, so we round ahead, but they end up right off our hip here and preventing us from tacking away. We've now got some wind surface to deal with, as is always the case in this corner of Farmore, so just making sure we don't collide with them. Looks like we'll pass ahead. But we are being prevented from tacking here by the alto, who's rounded behind us. But we would like to tack away because we don't feel like we're heading up to the mark very well. We'd much prefer to be on starboard here for the heading of the wind, at least down in this corner of the lake. Throwing a tack in here, not our greatest work. My main ends up being too far out, but we still get a nice press on the way out and build some speed, so not the end of the world. We're just keeping it safe since the wind is so shifty and gusty at the moment. So we're approaching these lasers here to windward and also the port ley line for the top mark. So beginning to think about tacking, looking around for space. And Dad goes for an interesting tacking technique here, which I'd say is probably non-RYA approved. Missing the toes traps there, but well recovered to keep him on the boat, so I don't have to practice my man overboard drills, so happy days. part of the great thing of the K6s is their keel, which means the crew and helm don't have to be hiking hard all the time. You see, we spend a lot of the time sat on the deck here, and it's really where we lose the most of our time on the handicap, is we don't work as hard as we should. So we're being a bit lazy here, sat on the side deck, but equally the wind's dropped a touch, so having a bit of a rest here, just keeping the boat flat with the main in. Don't want to put too much main sheet tension on because we start hooking the leech and losing a lot of our speed, having to hike harder for very little gain. So trying to keep things nice and loose, flowing over the sail in the light stuff, and then when it picks up we can really put the tension on the kicker and the main sheet as well to tighten that leech up. So putting in another tack here, one of our better ones. We're starting to work together as a team. This is our last weekend here of prep before we head off to the Open at Warsash this year, so we're just trying to get our teamwork together through our manoeuvres, and it's beginning to look a bit slicker. You see, they pick up a lovely gust here after the mark rounding on that catamaran off our right shoulder. It takes a minute for it to fill into us, and perhaps we should have steered up a little bit higher for it. But as soon as it hits, we are absolutely carted downwind. So it seems very light here, but you can see over my shoulder there's that patch of darker water, and it's coming down to us. There we go, we are moving absolutely on plane here. Just trying to keep it flat and moving. My main sheet's out maybe a bit too far, but otherwise just trying to keep an eye on all boats below us and make the most of this gust so we can stay in touch with the K6s ahead. Looking to jibe on the ley line here, and I've centred the pole because we don't quite know what the wind's doing, if we're going to get another gust or not. So thinking about jibing for the ley line here, and we're going to go for a safety jibe. Pull the main over manually. See the main a little bit stubborn to come over, so a bit more heel than we'd like, and the wind is still filling in again, but happy days, the boat's the right way up. Not too stressful, and away we go. And just look at that cat flying down below us. Lovely, efficient catch up there from Dad. It's pretty good. A bit slow on the roundup just to help him stay stable on his feet, and off we go. Now if you watch the K6 directly ahead of us, you'll see throughout this upwind leg we don't just stay in touch, but we close the gap just a tiny bit, which is a really good sign for our upwind performance in this kind of weather, probably owing to the bit extra mast rake we've got going on, but they're struggling to make the most of it, and we had just that touch lower than them to get a bit more speed, and we closed some of the distance here. For our port tack lane line here again, considering the tack after this buoy, and here we go. One of our better tacks of the day, at least improved on the previous ones. We'll keep improving throughout the day here, but not too bad, and we are pretty much fetching the mark here. Decided to go out to this left side again because there's some good stuff on the way down last time, and hopefully that keeps going on the way up. We are in a pretty hefty gust here, and you see using both the main and the jib just to stay upright on the same heading as before. Could potentially have considered pointing up, but you don't want to stall the whole rig and just end up going nowhere, so we'd rather reach a bit, maybe lose a bit of height, but keep the flow of the foils. but we are well eased on all the sails. There's a bit of a monster coming down the course as those dark clouds ahead of us come over the lake, and just trying to keep as much sail as we can on so we're not spilling too much power. Trying to keep Dad out, get his legs working a bit. So, and there we are, the big stuff is mostly past, so we are back into our groove, shifting gears back into our usual VMG mode here on the way up. Still, hopefully this hasn't passed all completely by the time we get to the top mark. We can have some fun on the way down. We will see. No white horses yet. This is probably one of the 20 knot, just over 20, passing through the occasional spike on the weather graph that the club has recorded. I'll go for a very safe tack there, because again we don't quite know how much this wind is filling in, and just trying to take it a bit easier on Dad so we're not relying on him to completely jump across the boat and save it from capsizing, really. Better to play it safe than sorry in these kinds of conditions. And you see the gust is just sort of dropping off, having to shoot up to get around this mark. Just marginal on staying in this gust on the way down. If we don't, we will lose touch with all of the K6s there. So hopefully we just catch the end of this as we go down and get some nice planing action here. And you see we're taking as much depth as we possibly can. The gust is sort of staying with us, but we have dropped off the edge of most of it. So we're going really deep here, again to try and avoid the mark where the lasers are going, but this is slightly spooky to be going this deep in an asymmetric boat. Remain all the way out just to stop it from unintentionally jibing here. Going for another safety jibe here. We're really deep, so trying to steer as little as possible through this jibe and just put the main over. You see I've steered way too much there, and as a result we heel over, but that's why we do the safety jibes, because if I make mistakes we can correct them. So going very deep here, and potentially I've jibed a touch too early, so we're going to have to go really deep to make this mark, or opt for 2 jibes, which we're not feeling too confident about in these weather conditions. So going for maximum depth here. Having some trouble with the wing wang, it's not fully come across, so the bowsprit is still straight ahead. We're not going to get as deep as we'd like, but with this gust coming here right at the end, we're definitely making it. So we go for the drop, nice and early, gets around the mark. Now this is where reading the sailing instructions gets really handy. We've gone for this mark rounding and completely lost track of how many laps we've done. Maybe this bit of spinnaker trouble just adds to the confusion, but we know we should be doing 4 laps, but we haven't bothered to count, so we're heading up on what would be our 5th lap, but really we ought to be going straight for the finish line. So this next minute or so is a complete waste of time and distance, and so we never really know where we would have ended up on handicap there, because we weren't hugely far off from the K6s. But here we go, we're noticing other boats in our handicap fleet are prickling about, not really racing, and we think, oh, there's something strange going on here. Should we have gone for finish? And here's where we realise and decide we need to tack back and head through the finish line. And there we are, through the finish. Much later than we should have been, so we'll never quite know how we would have placed in this one. But happy to come from such a poor start and still stay in touch with the K6s. Some good choices of side of the course to go to throughout, and suitable boat handling. Not perfect, but making choices to keep things safe in the shifty, gusty conditions. So here we are at the start of race 2. We figured out that the start sequence was 4 minutes based on our previous race, so here we are in a decent position with about a minute to go. My count on my watch was slightly off, so good to have a reliable crew to correct me. Tony in this area above us. I think we're going to be a touch early for the line, so we're just bearing away here, giving ourselves a little bit more room to build up some speed. Tony's gone for the spin. We opt for a double tack, again just killing a little bit of time because we're early and we've got loads of space around us. to go for the start. It's actually really poor, and we end up slipping down to windward, so have to work pretty hard to get it moving again on the way out of this tack. Overall, pretty poor, in all honesty, that short sequence, but the benefit of getting proper line sights even for a club race is we know when we're ahead, and so we're here, we can just see the bows of a couple of other boats in our class below us, and we think we're still well below the line, so we are pushing to get over, and there we are with a cracker of a start, just rolling over the top of that Vario, and now we've got loads of space below us to build up speed and get going up to windward. You can see the wind speed has picked up a lot since the first race. The mains eased more, even with us hiking at a decent amount. You know, Dad could be working harder, as always, but we're beginning to make pretty good speed upwind. Potentially we could be pointing more, but we've had to put a fair bit of kicker on to depower with the wind speed having picked up, so our pointing has been killed a little bit. In future we're going to need to use a bit more Cunningham to balance out that kicker. We really didn't use it to its maximum, but we're in a pretty nice groove here. For the rig setup that we had, this is nice, it's looking good, and we're just thinking about tacking because we don't want to go potentially past the port lane line, so we think we're clear ahead and we'll go for the tack. Not great, actually pretty terrible, but we are clear ahead of an Alto and a 700 go below us, well, a Vario and a 700, sorry. So we are on the way up and making decent ground. So again we found a nice groove here, and we just kept on port tack because we were making good headway, and the course was a little bit biased. We are ducking this Alto because we don't think we're going to get past ahead of them, and then looking to tack on the ley line. Again, giving it a bit more space, just to make sure we can get past that mark. Thinking about it, and there we go. And there we are, bang on the ley line, and this top mark is going to be fairly busy. A number of boats ahead of us, and that is fine. But this is a very naughty move from Tom in the 700 here. Club race, so who cares? But attacking in the zone, and we have to blow our sails so we don't run into the back of him. And the alto ends up going around on the outside of him, which it's a dubious move from Tom there. No harm done, and we're heading downwind. So very sketchy wind conditions here again. We're going deeper than we'd like to. Trying to stay in touch with the alto, but for some reason we just can't get the same heading as them, even with our pole wanged all the way across. So just trying to think of things we can do, considering a jibe here, and here we go. Proper jibe now, it's light enough, don't need any safety jibe. Pretty decent compared to our previous ones. Hoping we find something more on this side of the course, but we are going to have to do 2 jibes to get to the mark, we think, or again soak really low, but that's not ideal. So we are soaking low here, much lower than we really like. You see the jib flicking across, and that just comes from the decision to jibe early. It was mostly in search for better wind. We didn't find anything, so we ended up soaking deep, but it's really lost us a fair bit of ground to the alto. We really should have been matching on such a light downwind where they can't use the trapeze. So here we go, run a mark and back up. Hopefully we can find something better. Tom's had some kite trouble, so he's going to bear away and fix that. Bear in mind, this was his first day on the 700, so it's only fair. He's done well to keep with it so far, especially in the first race. But see, we are losing ground. Potentially we're pinching a little bit too much, and that just ends up snowballing with the K6s and Altos having stepped out so far so early in comparison to us. Because of that poor first run, we're really going to struggle to stay with them for the rest of this race. Nice to see our tacking is improving. Every time we do one, we get slightly better. That one was pretty good, at least for my liking. I'd be happy with that any day of the week. There's some good stuff coming down the course here now. You see it lifting us. You see that the colour of the water's changed. Streaks coming down now. So again, one of these pretty sizable patches of breeze with the clouds coming over. We're going to have to tack soon, but this keeps lifting us, so we're not considering it just yet. You see the blue kite up there, the catamaran's gone around the top mark already, and again it's just going to be rocketed down. It's not our fight though, but when we tack, the K6s and the Alto will come into view, and you'll see they are continuing to step out ahead of us. So with this wind, they're able to just carry a lot more power than we are. We're having to use a fair bit of kicker, which is depowering the rig and also kills our pointing a little. There's definitely things we could do to improve that, but yeah, the K6s are really in their element here. With a little bit more wind, we'd start making that up on a downwind, but at least today we struggled to stay with them in this race, even though we had a much better start than the first one, so fancy that. you see I'm getting very twitchy on the helm now and on the mainsheet because these gusts are just so significantly different from the prevailing wind speed that if you don't react quickly, things can go quite wrong. You'll stall up, you'll turn to the wind, or at worst case capsize. So just trying to manage it. It doesn't make for a very comfortable ride, and it's not the quickest way to sail, but we're just trying to react to the gust as best we can with the tools we have. Tacking onto the lane line now, and we are behind the alto, behind a couple of K6s as well. So in trying to correct my previous mistakes of diving too early, I reckon we dived a little too late here. The pole is straight, the main is quite far out, and we're just trying to get up to the mark here. In the slightly stronger winds now we are just barely scraping our way up to the mark. We're going to have to drop a little early and reach in, unfortunately. Which again, just sloppy, small mistakes that are going to cost us that gap to the K6s. We start to feel a bit of a header here. Is it attacking for the best average course? So here we go, we are attacking through. It ends up being just a pretty light spot to attack in anyway, but we're through and we're going again. But you see the 700, the Alto, and at least 2 K6s are through the top mark already, so we're really beginning to lag behind now. Difficult to diagnose exactly why, but I think it comes down to our sail setting, and you see we're not really working so hard anymore. We spent some time on the water already, and these K6s just take as much wind as you can throw at them, so we really need to work a little bit harder if we want to stay in touch with them for longer. now that it's this light, it is often better in the 400 if you can't get on the plane to just head straight for the mark, because you're not going to go much quicker by turning up. Depends on the wind speed, but we think it's light enough now that we can just head straight for the mark. So we've jibed, and we're going to try and get in just this one jibe straight down. And strange enough here, even with the steering pretty straight, it's driving us unintentionally. You can see Michelle down there in the Vario with the blue kite is steaming downwind, so this gust is just arriving to us now as well, and it's come from a significantly different direction, so a bit of an unintended jibe there, but it was light enough that it didn't worry us too much. But you see Michelle has gone down the left-hand side of the course, and she's picked up this gust way earlier than us, and actually she's going to finish ahead of us. Let's get to this bottom mark there. You can see significantly ahead of us in the Vario, which goes to show that our eyes are potentially a bit too far forwards when we're going downwind, and we're lacking some wind awareness there. So we're going to have to jibe back to get around this mark and then head to the finish here. And there we are through the finish. Some good, some bad, but I think we're in a pretty alright place heading to Warsash next week. We've managed some decent races, and we've stayed fairly in touch with the K6s in conditions that are just a little bit overpowered for us, so we're pretty happy with it, and we'll see what we can do in chop down south.